So we're going to have the last presentation before this break, and as Mr. Douglas just said, it's about the industry being in the driver's seat. We have to provide evidence that these concepts work well in order to show politicians, to show communities and cities and authorities. This is what we can do. Carlos von der Weyer said, biking could be economically so much cheaper. And in the interview, he also said that the problem is the positive effects, health care costs, the savings that are generated here at that end, they end up with the government, with our chancellor here, Angela Merkel in Germany. So, and the problems, infrastructure funding as with the communities. So there should be a balancing within the system. So to get this bridge, this balance established, Kristjan Maruste from Comodule, the next presenter, in his business, he deals with his company on how to think it newly. We are always thinking about leasing and sharing concepts, right? But today it's also peer-to-peer concepts. Can I give my e-bike to my neighbor? Do we find a system how to, offset that, to plan it? And this is something that Comodule is thinking about. Kristjan, are you with us?
I'm here. If you hear me, then I'm here.
Perfect.
That's perfect. We can hear you perfectly all right. We are thrilled to hear new from you. I keep my intro short because we are a little bit lagging behind. How do you think, as a startup, as a participant of the industry from the inside out, what's the mobility here? Biking mobility anew. So it's Kristjan Maruste from Comodule. The floor is yours.
I will share my screen and quickly go through some of the slides, but actually I'm more waiting for the questions that should come up later. But I will start a little bit with our slides to give you an overview of what we do. So at Comodule, we connect bikes and scooters to the internet. I put the slide that was here last year at the same conference, and I just wanted to point out that now we're roughly at 250,000 vehicles connected by our technology, and our team has grown to 70 people. But we're still global and still connect bikes and scooters around 45 countries in the world. And in short, what we help the bike industry to do is to connect these vehicles to the internet and then enable a lot of services. I put this picture here to show that our product can be in any kind of a form factor inside the motor, inside different vehicles and etc. But then I looked at what did I talk about last year? And last year I said that ownership is dying, so people own less, and that usership is growing, that people rent and subscribe to more different things. And I think this is extremely true also today. But secondly, I also pointed out that currently, so that was 1 year ago, is the best moment in history for the bike industry. And I looked back and I have to say that I was right, because I think if we look at what is going on today, then I think we all agree that it's by far the best time in the history for bike industry. And I think there are three kind of pushing moments for that. Number one, that is the most surprising to all of us, of course, is COVID-19. And how personal space as such has got a new definition, how people don't want to use public transport and they want to own their own vehicles. This is something that I think everybody in the industry has seen that, order numbers are going up, factories are booked, timelines are actually, going longer and longer. Secondly, I think what has a very, very big push, and we should not underestimate that, is the regulation push from the European Union, but largely also in the world. So there's a lot of regulations that are pushing bikes. There are subsidies to buy electric bikes. There is a lot of investment going into bicycle infrastructure. Who is following what is happening in Paris? Then this, I think, is almost like a miracle. They're putting so much effort and money into pushing, bicycles and scooters into the cities. And lastly, I think what was very true last time as well is the digitalization plays an important role. I liked very much what Philip said before, that they have this big concept and the vehicle and how everything works around it. And he also ended up saying that the only way how it really works is through digitalization. So there has to be some digitalization. And as the last part is what we do, I will have a little bit of a closer look into this. And why I think digitalization is extremely important and is pushing this market very heavily is that it does two very important things. One of them is that it creates new business models. And these new business models, I think, have been behind the majority of the growth in the industry. So number one, short-term sharing. This is the scooters or bikes we can rent from mobile phones on the streets. So clearly, thanks to connectivity inside this vehicle, there's brands like Jump from Uber or Lime or etc. A lot of different brands around the world. Then there's long-term sharing, which we also talked about last year. And long-term sharing, the biggest name I think is Swapfiets from the Netherlands, where people actually don't own the bike, but they rent it on a subscription base. And actually, this model doesn't necessarily require connectivity inside the bike, but it still requires digitalization in the form that you are communicating with your end consumer through an app, through a digital ecosystem. Then we have leasing models and insurance models that are changing a lot and coming together with the governments and industries. And here again, you can see a lot of push from the governments to actually offer better leasing terms. And new business models, I brought also out digital updates, where actually you can earn money from digital updates or digital goods instead of selling new bikes. So I can bring an example where Fatsua, for example, had a solution where you could buy a pro app and get more data from the vehicle, and then people actually just bought a digital good and paid extra for this bicycle in that sense. But secondly, what I think is extremely important that it creates is customer loyalty. So, and I think this is very underestimated in the industry, that when you have a digital tool, so-called application going with the bicycle, then you create a lasting relationship with the customer. And this is this kind of a service layer approach where the customer is in the center, and then you can always stay in contact, whether it's a manufacturer or a supplier, and you're turning this one-time sales into a customer relationship. So I think this is something that is still very much undervalued in the industry. The industry still is very much kind of product specific in the sense of the bike. So that when the bike is ready, they give it over to the dealers. And when the dealers sell it, they have very limited touch with the end consumer. And I think this is actually the biggest change that digitalization is bringing to the whole industry. And I think there's a breakthrough on how some companies react to their customer or interfere with their customer and how others do it. And I actually also think that through digitalization, the biggest breakthrough that happens in the ownership model is actually this turning the customer into a user. And I think it's very, very big. And what I wanted to bring out here is that when we had this electrification breakthrough, roughly, 8-10 years ago, then Bosch really became part of the bike industry. Before that, there was no Bosch in the bike industry. So there was a clear breakthrough where we electrified the bicycle and had a very large new player. And I think now through this change of how we treat the customer, whether we treat him as a customer or a user, we have another breakthrough moment in the industry. At the same time, I don't think there will be one very strong player, but there will be several smaller players that are coming up. And I brought some of them out here. There's a bike company called Cowboy. There's a very aggressively growing bike company, Van Move. There's a digital bike company, Ampler. They're all growing, more than 100% per year. So they're doubling their sales. And the main thing that they're doing differently from the current industry or the large industry is that they're putting they're looking at a customer as a user, not as a one-time customer. So they're creating digital tools. They're interacting differently. Very often they're only doing direct sales. But I don't think direct sales is really important here. It's actually how you keep on communicating with the customer later. And so once more, I think there will be a breakthrough moment where the relationship changes, but I don't think there will be one big player. There will be several that are coming and growing very quickly. And there are going to be several because the start costs of this breakthrough are very small compared to what Bosch had to do to build a new electrification product line. So here you actually have very small capex costs, but you can actually move fast forward. And second part that I wanted to talk a little about, or toss up an idea, I always try to look into the future, what I think will happen, and I will try to push up some ideas and see how the industry reacts. And the thing that I would like to ask from the industry today is that what do we call a bike industry? Because I think Eurobike originally was a bicycle as a leisure activity. So road bike, mountain bike, this kind of Sunday drives with your bicycle. Because bicycle has now become such a big part of mobility and everyday commuting, this has also evolved into our industry. But what I think has happened in the last 2-3 years, but very aggressive in the last year, is that instead of bikes, we also now have these small electric kick scooters that are really appeared next to the bicycle in the cities. And I think if we look at the sheer number of these vehicles, then in some cities around the world, they're actually getting to an even count with the bikes, or at least in the city, you even see more of these electric kick scooters than you see bikes. What I think is very interesting is that actually legally, they are going very soon and step by step into the same category than an electric bicycle. So basically for the government, they look at this vehicle as same as a bicycle. For an end user point of view, usability is the same. I use an e-bike or I use an e-scooter to get from point A to B, to get to work or do my shopping or whatever. And that also means that people actually look at these vehicles very similarly. They look at an e-bike for city and the scooter for city as the same way. And what is more is that it's even getting to a moment where you have these electric kick scooters for leisure as well, so that you go for a Sunday, ride, or you go to the mountains and etc. So my question to the industry is like, why do we see bikes and scooters differently? And do we see them differently? And what is our approach? So this is something I would toss up for everybody to think. And my last slide actually is, what should we call our industry in the future? If it will also encompass, scooters, kick scooters, maybe something in similar. Should we still call it the bicycle industry, or should we call it the micromobility industry, or what should we call it? And I think there is like two ways how we can look at that. And one of them is that we take these scooters or different vehicles and put them into our industry, and we work together for the future goals. Or the other option is that we clearly, decide that there are competitors, and then we make also our strategy accordingly. But I think this is something that is definitely needs some consideration and thinking through in our industry. Finally, I want to emphasize the same point that I emphasized last time, is that it's still the best time ever for the bike industry. I think last year I said it's best time ever, and then this year it's like 2 times better than it was last year. So I think we're starting into this hyper growth phase of the industry. And secondly, when we talk about connectivity and digital goods, then what I can already tell you what's going to happen in the next 2 years, because we are working on these projects, is that it's not only going to be about city or cargo bikes or rental fleets. Everything is going to be connected. So city bikes are going to get connected, road bikes are going to get connected, mountain bikes are going to get connected. We're moving towards an area where the bike is connected by design. It's coming out from the factory and it's already connected. We're getting to a moment where you don't have to buy a Garmin device for your road bike, because the road bike will automatically anyway track the ride and give you all the data when you get home. So once more, thank you for the opportunity. I think it's a really, really great time for the industry. And maybe most interestingly, what I want to toss up is that what do you think what the industry will be in 2 or 3 years? Because I see that there's a new challenger coming in that is actually doing the same thing that we do. And I would say that we would have to work together for the same goals, but it's up to us to decide whether we read scooters as part of the industry or not. Yeah, thank you. I really would wait for some questions.
Thank you, Kristjan, for your presentation. Very exciting. There are a couple of questions, and I have some, and even the audience, 2 or 3. My first question, really, e-scooter is the same as an e-bike? I believe that we have to define what is an e-scooter. Is an e-scooter which with less range, they're driving on the pedestrian ways, on the roads. You're using them for shopping. I'm talking about the small kick e-scooters. What are you talking about?
Well, I'm talking about the same thing. What I just see, because we're kind of connected with many lobby organizations, and we see where the legislation goes. And also we see how this very small kick scooter that was more for like kids, small kids thing, is now evolving into a much bigger vehicle, more sturdy. It will have baskets in front and etc. So, and at the same time, you also have some of these vehicles that are made for like, mountain terrains. So I see that they're more and more coming to the same sector, and I think they will be used for the same things, like going in the city from point A to point B. So for us, of course, they're not the same things. They have small wheels and etc. But in the end, if they do the same thing for the user, then they're considered basically the same thing. So, I think there is something that will happen. So we should be ready. I can actually point one thing out. I think we make more than 1 million e-bikes a year in Europe, and we make 0 electric scooters in Europe. So basically, it's not that people don't buy them, it's just that we don't make them.
Okay, perfect buzzword, keyword, though I'm still not of your opinion with regard to e-scooters, but the issue, manufacturability, who are the biggest players? One question from the audience is, how about the automotive industry in this respect? The big companies who are talking about production quality and distribution quality. We have to work together with them in the area of the small e-mobility, or are we actually competitors?
That is a very good question. I tend to believe that large companies can be changed and they can evolve, but at the same time, my experience shows me that real change only happens if somebody starts disrupting the industry. So I think we should really, in the beginning, mind our own business, push forward, do our own thing. And if the automotive industry really kind of wakes up and wants to participate in what we do, then of course we can collaborate. At the same time, of course, a lot of the components already come from automotive industry, Brose, Bosch, etc. They're automotive companies as well. But if you look at the tier, the OEMs of automotive industry, I don't think that anybody of them has yet taken bicycles really seriously. They have all taken these pilot projects and some marketing projects and marketing campaigns, but none of them have really taken it seriously. So I would say that let's focus on our thing and let's consider them currently as competition.
But especially in your competitive sector, we have an issue where we should talk together with them about universal mobility app. Uber wants to promote that. Each of the big car companies would like to promote that. The Mercedes with the Me Store, for example. We have public transportation tickets to be sold online, sharing apps online, bike sharing online apps. So we have to work together with the automotive industry.
I think this one platform approach is extremely interesting, but I wouldn't overvalue it. I mean, every kind of a startup company that's in the mobility industry wants to build this one platform and have everything accessible from one platform. When you pointed out Uber, then I think Uber is actually a relatively weak company because they are big, but they don't want to do anything. They just want to be this platform company. So I think end of the day, they will always require companies who actually build bicycles and do it well, and then connect them to these infrastructures and systems. So I'm also a little bit afraid if today the bike industry starts really thinking like, how could we sell public transportation tickets? I mean, that's, let others worry about it, in the sense that we should really focus on pushing the bicycle as a vehicle forward. So I wouldn't be too much afraid of this, that somebody will own the whole platform. I don't think it will be that easy.
Okay, but we also have other partners we would like to work with. One question is, how about infrastructure? The industry alone cannot manage that. We need cooperation models with cities, with municipalities. Do we have to go outside on the street? Do we have to protest? Should we have toll for bike lanes, for example?
I think we have this very good organization, Cycling Industry Europe. I think changing infrastructure is 100% a job for lobbying, and not lobbying in like a bad sense of the word, but really in a good sense, that we should stand for our rights and our needs. But as I said before, I don't actually even see this as a big problem today. I think because of global warming and now also COVID-19, it kind of feels that the cities are already doing a lot of work with infrastructure. So I have this feeling that our job is to feed in as much as good bikes and good services as possible. And of course, it's a little bit of an egg and a chicken as well. You won't have good infrastructure as long as you don't have a lot of good bikes. But honestly, I think I'm very positive at that. I see a lot of good change around the world when it comes to bicycle infrastructure. But one thing I would maybe like to say is that I think the only way how to get cities better, you don't have to do like big strategic thinking. I think the only way how to really get cities better is just to make cities worse for cars. Like you just take away one car lane and put that to bikes and everybody's happy.
Dann nehmen wir noch eine letzte Frage.
Okay, one last question. Otherwise, we will exceed the time frame. Maybe we can talk with Riese and Müller again about that, because we have one bike manufacturer who's involved in that. One concept question: e-bike sharing versus e-bike subscription. We see that the first models are emerging in the subscription area. It's already taking place, while Philip Douglas, on the other hand, said that sharing is not economically viable. It's hard to calculate. How about your opinion about the platform operators? Where is the demand increasing? Are we here talking about subscription? And what is the idea of free-floating elements? For example, can I, as an owner of an e-bike, offer that for money to others?
We've seen a lot of this kick scooter sharing. We connected more than 100,000 scooters around the world, and we've seen how this works. We say that there's a short-term rental and long-term rental. So short-term is this sharing on the street, and long-term is like subscription model. I think they both work. Short-term rentals payback period are significantly shorter. The biggest problem I see with the subscription service is that it's extremely capital intense. So when you do, I don't know, 3,000 euro e-bike subscription service, then you actually earn 3,000 euros back in many years. You know, usually it's like 70 euros per month. That's almost 3 years to earn the money back. So to build these subscription services, it's very difficult for the brand who owns the bikes. I think these subscription services will only really fly if the banks start strongly financing that. But today, the banks don't see a bike as value. You know, they will give you a loan on a car, but they won't give you a loan on a bicycle, because for them, it doesn't have like a resale aftermarket value. So I think subscription services will not really grow until we don't get banking back up for it. And this would be a massive breakthrough if somehow, together with the cycling industry and maybe the governments and collectively, we could establish a very good kind of method of evaluating price of bicycles after they're sold, because that would enable a lot of new business models thanks to financing from banks. So I believe that short-term rental will be there, subscription will be there, but subscription is much more difficult to do. And the last part of your question about Airbnb for bikes, I think this is a very exciting topic. The technology is all there to do that. We could already enable a brand to do it quite easily. Question is, can somebody build like a strong company who pushes this forward, or on the other hand, are people ready to do it? So I think this is a very interesting concept. If you look at Airbnb, though, what you always end up with is that in the beginning, people rent out their homes, and then at one moment you have these kind of companies who own, 20 flats or 30 flats. So I think that actually something like this will probably happen in the bikes as well, that instead of having your own bike rented out, maybe like small bike shops would do small rentals, 30 bikes, 50 bikes in small cities, against people like Uber who have 10,000 bikes, for example.
And exactly that is a question we will pose to Riese and Müller, whether this is a business model for them. Thank you, Kristjan. Thank you for your presentation, for your time. We have about 20 questions, but I'll send them later on to you and you can take a look at them.